To tonight's live session. Tonight we're going to be talking about building up a downstay with your dog. All right, the main aspect of building up a downstay with your dog is going to be utilizing the 3 Ds, also known as the triple D. All right, that's going to be duration. That's the first D. The second D is distance, and the third D is distraction. And again, thank you all for the constant feedback on these videos, trying to make my layouts on the whiteboard as easy to interpret and see as possible. All right. But before we dive into the downstay information, first let me talk about 2 podcast episodes that you might find useful. Our podcasts, formerly Canine Revolution Radio, which is now Pack Talk Podcast. All right. Episode number 27. Episode number 27 of the podcast talks about canine learning theory, how your dog learns. We're going to be going through classical conditioning and operant conditioning in that podcast. And if you're really trying to get to the root and the details of how your dog learns, then that podcast is going to be very informative for you to listen to while you're driving, while you're taking a shower or a bath, while you're cooking dinner, whatever. You can watch it on YouTube or you can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. Again, that's episode number 27, which covers canine learning theory. The next podcast episode I would recommend you to or refer you to is episode number 28, which talks about training progressions. All right, the podcast, again, formerly Canine Revolution Radio, now Pack Talk Podcast. All right, episode 28 talks about training progressions. Where do you start in your overall training progression? Where do you end? And what a training progression is it takes our goal for our dog, right? So in general, if we have a pet dog, we want them to be obedient. We want them to be calm. We want them to listen. We want them to come when called. We want them to stay when we ask them to stay. So how do we get there? From starting point to ending point. That's what a training progression is, right? So episode number 28, we talk about training progressions. We talk about our standard training progression at Canine Revolution Dog Training, where we take every single dog we train from start to finish for that specific owner's goals, okay? And if you haven't met me before, my name's Chad. I'm the founder and lead trainer at Canine Revolution Dog Training. Honored to have you guys watching our video tonight. And so let's get into it. Downstay, all right? So if you just look at the word here, downstay, this tells us that we have 2 things we have to focus on for this overall behavior. The first piece is the down position itself, all right? Ideally, when we're working on a down position, we're using food lures on a constant reinforcement schedule. What that means is we're using food lures to lure the dog into the down position, which I will demonstrate here in a little bit. And then we're going to be using a constant or continuous reinforcement schedule, which means every single repetition of going down, we're going to reward that. Once that becomes reliable, we're going to stop giving so much food. We're going to transition to a random reward schedule where we're randomly giving food rewards, and then we're going to also start implementing some accountability, okay? So that's one piece of the downstay behavior. The second piece is the stay portion. All right, the stay portion is what we're primarily concerned about with the 3 Ds, the triple D, right? But stay means if I ask you to stay there, you got to stay there until told otherwise. So there's quite a progression that goes into that. We prefer to teach that with a down position versus a sit position because number one, the down position is going to be more comfortable long term, right? If you're in a sit position, you have to hold that position. That could be fatiguing on your body, which does not allow you to learn that stay as best as possible, okay? So we prefer the down position for the stay, and then that stay itself, we're going to go through the triple Ds, the 3D, right? We're going to go through that progression, which I'll talk to you through in a second, and then we're going to implement accountability into that with a leash first and then remote collar second. So again, if all this is becoming mumble jumble confusing to you, I would recommend going to podcast episode number 28, Pack Talk podcast number 28, to look at the overall training progression, right? And how this all fits into it, okay? So downstay is what we're here for. 3 Ds, duration. All right, so let's make it simple. Duration is the amount of time that the dog is staying in that specific position, right? So I'm going to put the dog into a down position, right? Once the dog's in that down position, I'm not going to move my body, right? So let's say that I put my dog into a down position right here. I've got a leash attached to them, right? I'm not changing my aspect in relation to the dog, okay? I'm just focused on that dog staying in a down position for as long as possible. And what I'm going to do is say good, provide a food reward at a certain interval of time to work on building up that duration, okay? Once the dog's comfortable with my initial interval of time that I'm giving food rewards, then I'm going to slowly lengthen the interval of time between food rewards. And then once that, gets to a reasonable amount of time, I'm going to then shift to go to distance, right? Distance between dog and handler, okay? So I hope that makes sense as far as duration goes. Again, keeping it really simple, put the dog into a position, reward very frequently, right? You don't change your aspect in relation to the dog. You maintain exactly where you are in relation to the dog, and then slowly increase the amount of time between those food rewards until your dog becomes more comfortable being in that position, all right? Once you achieve that, then you're gonna go to distance. And what distance is, to keep it simple, is distance between dog and handler, between dog and trainer. All right, so you've got your dog into that position that it's very used to doing duration work in, and then you're slowly gonna take one step back, you say good, you step forward, you deliver a reward. Take 2 steps back, say good, step forward, deliver a reward, okay? So again, you're gonna have your dog in a position, you're gonna be at a certain distance from them, which I know this might be hard to kind of see that small writing there, but then you're gonna, over time, increase your distance, okay? So what we go for is we usually start at about 2 feet from the dog. We go out to 6 feet because that's the length of our standard leash. And then once that is solidified, we'll start using long lines to help us achieve longer distances while maintaining lines of communication through the leash and safety of the dog, right? Because we don't want that dog to pop up and run away, right? That would eliminate the whole purpose of that stay position. You'd be working against ourselves, but we also want to have a line of communication with them. So I start at 2 feet, I start backing up, and then we start increasing from there, 6 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 30 feet, 60 feet, whatever, okay? Whatever your distance is gonna be. Once we finish off leash work and our overall training progression, and again, I'll refer you to podcast number 28 to look at the overall big picture training progression. But once we finish off leash work, then we'll be off leash practicing further distances, okay? All right, then let's talk about distraction. That's where this piece right here comes in. This is the wagon wheel, all right? Distraction is my dog maintains a downstay no matter what's going on around them, all right? In its simplest form, that's gonna be you, the trainer or the handler, moving around your dog, okay? As you progress, as your dog becomes more comfortable with the overall downstay behavior, you're gonna introduce other distractions that are gonna challenge your dog. They could be a cat walking around your dog, could be chickens walking around your dog, could be going out to other places, right? Which we definitely recommend. Again, going out to other places and proofing all these behaviors is part of our overall training progression, podcast number 28. As we progress in our training, we're gonna make criteria more and more difficult, okay? But distraction, this is how we're gonna do this, okay? So imagine the center of this wagon wheel is where you put your dog at, all right? So you put your dog right there in the center, and this outer rim right here, that's where you're gonna be primarily working. And these spokes that go to the center, these are gonna be when you transition to your dog to reward them for staying there, then you back up and you continue working around the perimeter of the wagon wheel, okay? So you put your dog in the middle, say good, reward. You start backing up as far as you can. So if you have a 6-foot leash, a standard 6-foot leash, you don't want that leash to get tight. You want it to have a little bit of slack in the leash. Once you achieve that distance, you start working your way around the dog, okay? Ideally, the dog is staying in the down position. You're working your way around. The dog makes eye contact with you. You say good as soon as they do that. You move into them, you reward them, then you back out and you keep working around the wagon wheel. You're gonna work both ways around the wagon wheel so your dog's 100% used to you moving in a dynamic direction, all right? Now, some dogs are very challenged when you get behind them, all right? So let's say your dog is facing this direction right here, okay? Your dog's facing that direction. Hopefully you can see that, okay? So if your dog's facing this direction right here, as you work your way around behind them, they may get up or they may flip around or something like that. So what you need to do is break it into a smaller pie, right? Get your dog used to you walking to their side, back to the front, to the side, back to the front, a little bit further behind them, back to the front, and work your way to where they're comfortable with you walking all the way around them. All right, so I hope that concept makes sense. What happens if your dog gets up when you're working on this? Well, you want to keep it as simple as possible. You, as the handler and trainer, you want to remain calm, confident, relaxed. All right, so if your dog gets up, all you're going to do, you're going to use your leash, your line of communication, to take them right back to where they were, right, initially. So if they get up and they wander off over here, okay, you're just going to grab the leash, take them right back to the center of your wagon wheel, put them back into a down. If the down is not 100% solidified, you can lure them back down. You can give them a command to go back down. If they know how to down, you can say no. You can give a little leash correction for that. All right, then you just go back to your drill. And that's how you build that up, okay? You will solidify the accountability piece of the dog not getting up. You'll solidify that more later in your training progression, okay? Again, episode 28, you'll solidify that more in your training progression, especially when you complete remote collar conditioning. That will help you just very precisely fine-tune your stay work and build up your durations with stay, all right? Before we go into a little bit of a live demo, let me talk about real quick, okay? You go through the triple D, duration, distance, distraction. You go through all these drills. You go through the wagon wheel. The dog has a pretty good understanding of what to do, all right? The dog is pretty reliable during these drills, these routines. Now it's time for you to push the limit. You have to put your dog in a downstay for a period of time where they get bored, all right? Your dog may be good staying down for 5 minutes. Your dog may be good staying down for 10 minutes. What happens when they get bored? They usually want to get up and wander around. So you have to proof that and make sure that they can stay down as long as necessary. For us, it has to be at least 5 to 8 hours. Got to do 5 to 8 hours in a downstay position before we consider you good to go, right? So with that being said, set up an opportunity, a scenario where you can execute those longer periods of time in a stay position and monitor the dog to build up the habit of the dog in a stay position, getting bored, but remaining there, okay? Learning to remain there no matter what, all right? And again, it's not gonna be at the foundational level of the stay training. It's gonna be as you progress further. Ideally, when the remote collar conditioning is done, you've done the remote collar application. That allows you to apply accountability very precisely to the dog and the time at hand, okay? So you guys, if you have questions on that, let us know in the comments. I'm gonna grab Lily here. We're gonna do some demonstration, okay? So real quick, obviously Lily does not know how to downstay, okay? If she doesn't know how to downstay, and we're kind of going off on a separate subject here, but I think it's important. If she doesn't know how to downstay in the house, then I need to manage her if I'm not working with her. One way I'm gonna manage her is with a kennel, all right? So let's go ahead and take her out of the kennel here. So before I take her out, I'm gonna clip this leash to her, let her come on out, okay? She's a cute little girl, obviously, okay? So again, if I'm in the house, right, and she doesn't know how to downstay, she doesn't know how to come when called, she's a very fresh dog in training, so she doesn't know all this stuff. We've worked on a little bit, but how am I gonna manage her? I'm gonna keep a leash on her, all right? Keep a leash on her, okay? All right, go ahead and move the chair. So notice how when Lily came out of the kennel and she didn't know what was going on. She's got the leash on her, so she can't just walk off on me. What'd she do? She went into her default behavior at the time, which is just to sit down, okay? All right, Lily, sit, good, okay? All right, so let's talk about what we just talked, let's demonstrate what we just talked about and kind of talk through it. Lily, down, good. Okay, so she has learned the down, still developing that a little bit, but as you can see, I asked her to down, she laid down, good. She's looking right at me, she's giving me that very nice eye contact. I've got the leash loose, all right? So notice the first D, that duration, okay? I wanna stay right where I'm at in relation to her. I don't wanna walk off on her. I don't wanna make it too complicated for her. I have to keep it simple. Okay, so she's looking at me, I say good, and I just provide a food reward to her, okay? Two ways you could deliver food rewards, and ideally you're using food rewards, but one way is you simply take the food, good, and you hand it to her right underneath her nose, okay? The other way, you say good, and you put it right between her paws, okay? The benefit to putting it between the paws is that she has to go down to get it, which can help a lot of times promote staying down, okay? So I recommend going both ways, sometimes giving it right underneath her nose, sometimes putting it right between her paws. And notice her eye contact on me, we're solid right now, we're looking really good, okay? All right, so duration, I'm saying good at an interval of time. You know, I might be watching on my watch, right? It's been 10 seconds, good, right? Or you could count it out, or you could estimate it, whatever works for you, a certain interval of time. Once the dog gets very comfortable with that, you slowly increase the amount of time between the rewards, all right? Once you master the duration piece, good. And notice I've been in the same spot the entire time. That's super important for working on duration. You have to maintain your aspect in relation to her, okay? Once we master this, then I'm gonna go to the second D, which is distance, distance from dog to handler. This is a 6-foot leash, right? And notice I'm working in a house right now. You can do this in your house, okay? So all I do is I take one step back, good. She stays there because we've already worked on the duration. If you follow this process very precisely, you focus on duration first, make that very comfortable, then you go to distance, you won't really have that much issue, okay? So I started right here, I take a step back, good. I step forward, I reward. Me saying good is what we call a marker, a verbal marker. I'm letting her know that she's done the right thing and that a reward is coming, okay? So I'm taking a further step back. Notice the leash is still loose. Good. Step forward, reward. Notice I'm not making it too complicated. I'm not moving around her. I'm staying in one aspect from her. I'm just staying right here in this aspect. Good, right? I'm not making it complicated, so keep it simple. The whole premise of this drill, the whole premise of working on this behavior, keep it simple for you and for your dog, okay? So I back up a little bit further. Notice I've kind of got the end of the leash is still loose, good, okay? This is the best session that we've had. We've done a couple sessions, this is the best session we've had, right? So let's talk about that real quick. I've just said this is the best session we had. We were working on duration all day today, okay? With that being said, that's what your sessions are. If your primary focus is to get this downstay behavior good to go, you're gonna do a short session of duration work, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes. Give her a break. Well, next time you come out to train, you're gonna do another session of duration work, and you're doing that session over and over and over until the dog is comfortable with that. Then you're gonna change up your session. You're gonna go to the next type of session, which will be the distance work, okay? All right, so I step back again, good. Step forward, okay, reward. All right, hope that makes sense. All right, so now I would say she's comfortable with duration. She's comfortable with distance. Now we're gonna go to distraction. Remember, we got our wagon wheel. So the first thing I'm gonna do, hold the leash just loosely in my hand. I'm gonna start moving around her. I'm looking for that eye contact. She does give it to me. I say good, I provide a reward to her. Then I just go right back to my wagon wheel drill, okay? I'm just moving right around her. Notice how she's maintaining eye contact. She's getting a little bit antsy, but she's doing a good job. So I just say good, deliver food reward, step back, keep moving around the wagon wheel, okay? Hope that makes sense. If you guys have questions, let us know in the comments below. Notice I'm behind her now. She got up. I'm gonna say no, good. She goes back down, say good, reward, okay? So I just walk around her. Notice when I got behind her, she got a little bit antsy. So remember how we talked about earlier that if you get behind some dogs, they get antsy like this. I just grab the leash, no? Good, so that's what an example of a little leash correction would look like in this scenario. Doesn't need to be complicated, just know, little tug on the leash to signal to them to go back down. Now let's say for an example, and I'm gonna set her up for failure right here, but let's say for example, she moves over here when I'm working on the downstay, right? All I do is I grab short on the leash, I move her right back to where she was. Nope. Good. As soon as she goes back into that down position, because we did duration, right? As soon as she goes back into that down position, I just go right back into my wagon wheel drill, my distraction drill. Good, okay? Hope that makes sense. Let's say you're at the beginning of your downstay training, you're on the duration piece. Let's say she gets up, I'm gonna set her up for failure again real quick. So so she's moving around, let's act like she's moving around. She doesn't know how to down that well. She doesn't really know what's going on. I'll take a food reward. I'll lure her like this, okay? And I'll just have her go right into a down position with my food lure. And then I'll give it back to her right there. And then I'll just go back into whatever piece of the downstay drill I'm working on. So that type of scenario will usually happen when you're working on duration. Okay, the first couple times you're working on duration, they will want to get up. They don't know what to do. So all I do, let me show that again. Let's say she gets up, she doesn't know what to do. I just take my food reward, I lure her back to the original position, put her right back into a down. Good. Give it to her there and go right back into my duration work. Why does that work so well? Well, she's getting reinforcement history in that position. So I'm not allowing her to have food anywhere else. She's only getting the food reward right here, right? And so by building that up right there, she wants to be in that down position, okay? So anyway, that's a good demonstration of building up that downstay behavior, getting that duration, getting that distance, getting that distraction. Something else that plays a good key into this is your overall emotional state and energy state as the handler and trainer. If I was getting all flustered and upset, why does she keep disobeying me? Why does she keep getting up? Yada, yada, yada. You know what I'm saying? If I was to act like that, guess what she would do? She would reciprocate that type of energy and would be more difficult to handle. So if you're getting frustrated, what I recommend, manage her, put her in a kennel, let her have a little bit of a break, and then take her back out later for more downstay work, okay? So that's something very important to pay attention to. Keep it simple, remember, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't try to jump from duration to distraction too quickly. Make sure you have a solid foundation on each of these sections. You have a solid duration foundation, solid distance foundation, then go to a solid distraction foundation. Once you are very comfortable with all this and she's doing this right here for you, and this is probably about 2 days of working on this, all right? Once you get to this level, you're ready to continue progressing in your overall training progression, which next coming up very soon for her is gonna be getting that remote collar condition and applied, and then we can finalize all these behaviors very precisely, okay? So anyway, hope that makes sense. Hope you guys found some value from this. Please let us know in the comments below. Any questions you have, we try very hard to respond to every single question that comes through. Sometimes it does take us a little bit of time, but we will get back to you at a certain point. Let us know if you have any future videos that you want to see from us, and you guys can always reach out to us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever's your platform of preference. And then just a quick reminder, episode number 27 of Pack Talk Podcast, episode 28 of Pack Talk Podcast. You're going to find more resources in those episodes that pertain to what we talked about today and to help you move forward with your overall training and your overall training goals, okay? And until next time, we'll see you guys later. Out.